You can't get something wrong about someone that you don't actually hold in your mind. My own childhood is not fundamentally different than the kids that attend here. It's like these families are not struggling through a lack of effort, they're struggling through a lack of opportunity. We're all more interconnected than folks think. My name is Ryan Downey. I'm Executive Director here at East Atlanta Kids Club. East Atlanta Kids Club is an out-of-school time program that has been serving Southeast Atlanta since 1998. So this is our 28th year of service. And effectively, we run no-cost after-school, summer camp, counseling, weekly food distributions, and other ways to provide material relief to working families here in Southeast Atlanta. East Atlanta Kids Club was founded in 1998 by my predecessor, our founding executive director, Jill Cedar, who's still a neighbor 1 block behind me on Gresham Avenue. Because what she saw in the late 90s and early aughts was a community that had been systemically disinvested in for decades, and accordingly created hazardous conditions for kids. There was a lot of open-air drug dealing in this community. There was a pretty high amount of gun violence, and while we still have remnants of that, it certainly has changed over the past 28 years. When it started, it was more about a structured, safe place for kids to be that would remove them from danger. We can say nearly 3 decades on, with the neighborhood firmly in the throes of gentrification, perhaps late-stage gentrification, that what we do now is a little bit different, right? So we're anchoring legacy families, so the kids, the grandparents, the parents, the guardians, brothers, sisters, all those folks, to a community that is actively displacing working folks. There's still plenty of need here in Southeast Atlanta, and we've been ramping up the different kind of ways that we can serve over the years. So like I said, we now do weekly food distribution. That was born out of COVID. We started that in March of 2020. That serves all ages. We now provide a 3-day holiday event called Present Palooza that provides material relief for families. And we now provide counseling, which we didn't used to provide. And we're always looking for what the next opportunity is to be of service. So anyone that's familiar with East Atlanta will know that it's undergone a certain amount of economic redevelopment, which is a nice, potentially neutral way to say gentrification, right? Like the impact of economic redevelopment is positive in the sense that we get new businesses, vacant storefronts become thriving businesses. Our community associations and our business associations grow and have more ability to have both power and soft power, right? Influence in the way this community develops to meet resident needs. But what also happens is that legacy residents, particularly low-income legacy residents, and if we want to put a finer point on it, low-income Black and brown children and their families are often not provided a seat at the table where decisions get made about what happens in the community, right? And so what we see more and more is as this community continues to be more affluent, and it's certainly not as affluent as other pockets of the city, but it's in transition, the families who we've long served can't keep paying their taxes, can't afford to rent, can't afford to buy homes in this neighborhood. I just closed on a home today. It's public record, right? I spent $699,000 on that house. 10 years ago, when I moved into Ormwood Park, I bought a house for $287,000. Many of our families, if they own homes, bought homes in this neighborhood when they were $70,000, $100,000, $150,000. This is no longer a place, really, where working families can make their start, and it's increasingly not a place where working families can sustain if they've been here for generations. Look, let's put some finer numbers on this as well, because we know our numbers here. You can go on our website and look at our impact and insights and see that we track all this. So like the average household income of a family that attends our no-cost programming is about $31,000. The average household income of our paying families, which is about 20% of our students that pay a small rate to attend here, is $199,000. $31,000 for a family of 4 is right at 100% of the federal poverty line. $199,000 is still below, but close to what the Community Foundation for Greater Atlanta says is required for a family of 4 to live comfortably in this city. Obviously, comfort is a relative term, and this city is not monolithic, right? There's different areas where money stretches further or less far. But, we see every day through the lived experience of our students that certainly $31,000 is not enough, right? Our goal is to close the gap to the extent that we can by offering no-cost childcare. by offering quality youth development that exposes our young people to pathways and opportunities they might not otherwise realize, by providing the material relief of food, of counseling, of things that folks just can't afford. Everyone deserves to have these kinds of supports. We have a fundamentally broken social safety net. We are doing our part to stand up, this little fragmented part of it. As a neighbor, like I live here in East Atlanta as of today, but I lived in Ormwood Park, and I serve on the East Atlanta Community Association. I serve on the East Atlanta Business Association. I serve on the GO team at Parkside and the Jackson Cluster Advisory team. Like I have a pretty broad view of what it looks like for families in this community, and folks just aren't really doing quite as well as they might appear to be doing on the surface. And that's true of middle-income households as well. But if we're struggling, and if folks are bemoaning all the challenges they might be facing in the year 2026, I hope they might spare a thought for the folks that have been right at the poverty line for decades, and have always been systemically disinvested in. Last year we raised $1.13 million. We spent about $850,000. We operate on an accrual basis, right? So like, it looks like we had a profit. We did not have a surplus or a profit, however you want to frame it. From a cash flow standpoint, we run a balanced budget. What isn't changing is linearly costs are going up. One specific example, 3 years ago, our insurance for this program was $18,000. Last year it was $38,000. This year it's about $58,000. That's just insurance costs. You can't operate a business like this without insurance, without transportation, without the operational trappings, but all of them are getting more expensive. What we're not able to spend money on the way we would like to is increasing our staffing to adequate levels. We have enough program staff. I'm the only non-program staff member. That's probably not a sustainable practice for a $1 million organization. So I'm the only non-programmatic staff, non-direct service staff member here, ops, development, marketing, legal, finance, all that good stuff. I laid all the carpet in this room, put together most of the furniture, all that good stuff, right? Pick up the food at the food bank every Friday, raise all the money. Not sustainable for a $1 million organization. And that's where we are. This year we budgeted revenue of $1,043,000 against, I think, about $879,000 worth of expenses. That's a big hill to climb for one person. I've been here for just over 6 years, 6 years as of February 3rd, and I've never cut anyone's roles. We've never fired someone because we didn't have enough money to sustain it. We've never cut a program, reduced its duration, reduced the dosage, liquidated assets. Like, so you talk about big challenges. Like, I make some personal sacrifices, right? In terms of the workload that I have, and certainly all of our staff do. That's what a small to mid-sized nonprofit does, unfortunately. None of us are staffed well enough or financed or capitalized well enough. But we're not making cuts to anything that impacts direct service or program. So the hard decisions are like, I'm going to hire an ops person. I've got to raise that money. I really need a development person. I've got to make structural decisions about where I can afford to grow capacity, because we can't have all the things we need. We can't even have half the things we need. But that's not unique to us. You talk to my peers at any other small to mid-sized nonprofit, and that's the story of community-based organizations in this city and elsewhere. Look, no one needs to feel sorry for me. We could all do other things. We could all be better compensated. And we choose to do this work on purpose, right? And you could look up our 990s. Nonprofits are fun like that. You can see what I'm paid to do this for every previous year. And a year from now, you can see what I'm paid to do this year. It's a good enough salary. Like, I make a living wage and then some. Frankly, I make above the median household income for this zip code. Is it competitive with the for-profit sector? Not even close. Is it hard for my family? Because I spend long hours, long days here, because we were closed 20 days last year out of 365, right? And we manage a community asset and multiple programs. Like, that's hard. I have a 4-year-old. I have a daughter that turns 2 next month. And the only way I get to spend the time that I want with them is to integrate them into this work, which I think is meaningful for them as well. But that doesn't come without additional strain for my wife, for my kids, for me. You know, this is what 40 looks like as a nonprofit leader, for what it's worth. It's not beautiful. Yeah, look, I worked for 9 years at a national nonprofit that paid me a lot better, that had a good retirement match, that had full health care coverage, that had all the benefits you could ever want. And it was a national role that had me traveling 30 weeks a year. And so I couldn't see my family the way I wanted. I chose much smaller compensation to come do community work intentionally because I picked the kind of organization that I can integrate my life into, right? So I live in this community. I care about the overall development and well-being of this community. I have kids in this community now that are going to go to the same school as the kids that are in this other room that you might be picking up on the mic. And so it's really easy for me now to say, like, let me bring my son, my daughter here after school. They can play in the park. I can have eyes on them. I can have eyes on these kids. And we can weave it all together. But, you know, they still didn't get to choose that, right? Like, it's still work. And they may or may not resent that at some point. It's a hard thing to figure out as an ED. And we can hold philanthropy and funders to account and ask for more, and we should ask for more so that this is sustainable. But failing that, you know, something's got to give, and it's usually our time with our people. I never get my jobs the traditional ways, which is to say I don't get them through relationships and my network and people that are vouching for me, although that probably will change whenever I decide to move on from here because I apparently am in demand now and get recruited. But when I came here, I wasn't an executive director, right? And so it was a leap from a senior program role to national org to this. And I applied off of a post I saw on Indeed, right? And that's how I got my job a decade before that. And I'm not like hyping a specific job aggregator, but I've always applied sight unseen and just hoped that my profile stood out. And if I got to an interview, knew I could close it. So I saw an opportunity to come work in my community. I applied to an online post. And I will tell you, the board at the time did not want to interview me. None of them are still on the board because that's how term limits work, but we had great partnership while they were here, but they were spooked by the reality that I haven't raised money before and I haven't been an ED before. And the recruiter who was leading that process reached out to me the night before the interview I eventually got and said, a seasoned executive director who lives on the other side of town declined their interview tomorrow because the pay isn't high enough and they don't want to have to drive across the city every day to do their job. So I'm going to ask the board if you can take their spot, if you're willing to show up on short notice. And I did. And the rest is history. Yeah, look, my own childhood is not fundamentally different than the kids that attend here. For much of my my elementary school time and part of my middle school time, I was in a single parent household in the south suburbs of Atlanta. In a working class household. My mom works in food and beverage. My dad was a steel worker and due to an accident became disabled in the 90s. They remarried each other eventually and when we brought the family back together, but the economic challenges of being in a working class household never fundamentally went away. And because I grew up in an affluent part of the suburbs, my mom moved us to Peachtree City right around the time of the Olympic Games. I was surrounded by folks that had access to resources and did not have them myself, which does a couple things. One, it really highlights disparity of opportunity and access at a young age. It also, the positive thing is it provided me with individuals in the community that of their own volition decided to take up for me, to help me, you know, with supplies if I need them, to pay for my dues so I could play soccer, to drive me to a tournament. To give me a little bit of support for clothes or food or what have you. And if we operate under the assumption that every child has access to a community of folks that will just look out for them of their own volition, like we will fail thousands of children here in Atlanta alone every year. So what we're doing here, and my why is to create something bigger that is more equitably distributed to students that needed opportunity just like I did at a young age. And then to support the families who work extremely hard to provide for their kids. It's like these families are not struggling through a lack of effort, they're struggling through a lack of opportunity. I mean, I think there's pretty good like research and narrative that's pretty well known by most folks in Atlanta about that economic inequity of this city and really the lack of upward mobility for folks that are born into poverty in this city. Very few folks make it from poverty to not just a living wage, but really to like what I referenced earlier, something like what the Community Foundation would say is a comfortable income for their family. And Getting something wrong about the families that I serve would assume that folks see and hold them in their imagination in the first place. You can't get something wrong about someone that you don't actually hold in your mind. Which is not to say that, like certainly in the schools, like there's teachers, there's social workers, there's administrators, there's kind neighbors, there's folks that are civically engaged in this community and every other that care deeply about our kids, whether they have their own kids or not. And I think there's large swaths of folks that for whom our kids and our families are invisible. And I've written and I've talked about this elsewhere, and I know it's an antagonistic view and a way to frame this. But to me, this is me, Ryan Downey, speaking, not East Atlanta Kids Club speaking, right? Even though those things get conflated sometimes, it feels like we are waiting out our kids and our families. And so folks put up yard signs. And they do all the optics, right? Like of what we believe in this community and who we want to support. But if capital doesn't move that way, and that doesn't just mean money, right? That means time, talent, testimonials, ties, like all the things that you can give to build up community and to build up folks who are in service to community. If that stuff's not flowing to our kids and families, then we're just waiting for them to not be here anymore, which is like a deficits-based approach. Like I think we make our kids and families a problem in our community that will disappear if it just keeps getting richer. Which typically also means is it continues to get more homogenous from a racial and ethnic background, right? And I just think, while that isn't like an actively harmful thing to do, it is certainly a passively harmful thing to do, and deteriorates the community that we're seeking to build here. I said the city's not monolithic earlier. The city is all different kinds of communities and cultures and opportunities. Our youth also are not monolithic. They each bring different assets. They bring different challenges. They have wildly different lived experiences. But the thing that we hope unites them all is the joy of possibility, right? So what we hairdryer, sorry. What we always learn is what our kids are capable of when we provide them with access to opportunity. An example is our film camp. We're going on our third year of film camp, which has almost a dozen different partners that donate all their services, their cameras, their time, their labor. The Plaza Theater donates the LaFont Auditorium there for the screening. And our kids put on just a dope short film every year. They make something amazing that typically requires you to have a lot of money and to go, pay for camps down at Trilith or something. Every kid has that possibility and that potential. Every kid doesn't have a platform for it. Yeah, no, I mean, that's the thing that we all hold in mind all the time. Um, Look, well, let's just talk about immediate impact, economic impact. If we raise and spend about $1 million a year, we multiply that, the ways we spend it, like whether it's, at the community food bank, we might spend $250 a week to put out $6,000 worth of food at retail value, right? We are providing free after school and summer camp programming while also paying staff to earn a living wage to do care work in their own community, while also contracting with just dope coaches and program partners that are also entrepreneurial and trying to stand up their own dreams and their family. We are saving costs and we're multiplying dollars. And so I think, we have an economic impact in this community, probably closer to $2 million. If you pull that out of the community, lots of folks suffer. There's just no really easy way around that. Programmatically, if we have 160 to 180 kids here every year that are in after school and summer, they have to go somewhere else. It puts downward pressure on anyone else. It doesn't matter if it's a boys and girls club that's really well funded. They still have their own economics, right? And they still run out of seats and they still close when it gets too hard. It doesn't matter if it's a for-profit daycare that's going to make a little bit of money off of each kid. They can only take so many kids. Everyone, we're all more interconnected than folks think. So it would have knock-on effects for every other institution around here. The seniors that come here every Friday to get food, because hundreds of people eat off the food we put out every Friday, would have to find somewhere else to get food or they would go hungry. The kids that are enrolled in our individual and group counseling, whose families likely cannot afford to pay for counseling because it's exorbitantly expensive, and it should be. It's healthcare, like it is what it is. It's important. Would go without the kind of intervention that they need, which will reduce protective factors, which will increase risk for our youth and adverse outcomes. We don't mind as a city pumping as much money as we can into, let's say, the Atlanta Police Foundation. That might be controversial, right? Or into carceral institutions, or into ways that we might address the downstream impacts of not investing in our space, in human services and youth development. We can continue on that trajectory. That's what happens if Kids Club closes. Look, we put more money into solving a problem 30 years from now than actually providing folks opportunity and heading it off now. I think it's really simple, and folks don't think in terms of the future. They think in terms of what's happening today. And so a lot of times, if you don't have like a systems framework, you do the thing that helps for this election cycle. You do the thing that helps your company for this quarter, or whatever, report, the corporate social responsibility people put out, or the family foundation preserves its assets and hits their 5 or 6% distribution. Like, I don't want it to sound like I'm attacking every institution that we rely on to support us, because I'm not. But I want to say, like, sometimes we focus on right now and the success of our individual institution, and we miss the broader context of what it means to make these investments for our community and for our society as a whole. It's not about Kids Club. I mean, we would love your support, and like the development thing that I'm supposed to say is all those T's, right? Treasure, time, testimonial, ties, talent. We need all of that, not just your treasure, not just your money. But let's just be clear, we do need money. This is a critically underfunded sector. The nonprofit sector as a whole is facing the knock-on impact of government abdication to do its job at the highest levels. Philanthropy cannot fully step into the fold there and like bridge that divide. So we need more folks to rally around us and make sure that organizations like ours, not just ours, are here 28 years from now, and that we're not just talking about the last 28 years. So yeah, we need all those T's. Some of the things people can do that they don't realize and they under-leverage is who you can introduce us to, who you can share our work and our impact with. It's not always about your checkbook, it's about opening doors, because I would tell you, our families don't always have the access to open the doors to the tables where decisions are made. And you might assume that executive directors do, but we've already established that I come from the same working class background. I'm not as plugged in, as folks might think, and to the extent that I am, it's taken hard work to forge those relationships, right? So introductions, connections, resources.